What's up, everyone? It's Benedict here, aka BHL Hudson. Welcome back to the BHL2 channel. We are quickly approaching the end of 2025, and with that comes a lot of fun end-of-year stuff in the film world. You know, I got my top 10 best of the year, top 10 worst of the year, ranking every movie I've seen this year, videos coming up. But another cool thing we get at this time of year is the Variety Actors on Actors series, where they take the actors and actresses from the biggest awards contenders of the year, the ones who are up for the big awards, and or just the ones who were in fancy and or popular movies in the past year, and they pair them up, get them to basically interview each other, and it's a pretty interesting series. I feel like you get not only, you know, the interesting insights into acting and the filmmaking process that you get from a normal interview, but having these actors be interviewed by their peers, you get to see a little bit of a different side of them. You get to see if they have chemistry with the various people they're paired up with. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. We'll talk about DiCaprio and Jennifer Lawrence. Very interesting interview. But yeah, today I just want to go through all of the ones from the 2025 season, talk about interesting moments, what I feel like you could learn from it, and also maybe go on a little bit of a rant about how up their own asses actors are in some of these. But yeah, should be interesting. Let's talk about it. First of all, the first one they released was Adam Sandler and Ariana Grande. Adam Sandler from J. Kelly, Ariana Grande from Wicked 2. This was an okay one. I think this was a good one to start with. It's like a fun pairing. It's a very, you know, two very beloved people in different ways. Yeah, they are obviously charming. A lot of these actors, I'm going to say, like, they're very charismatic people. They're very charming. I will also say about a lot of these, there's a little bit of an eye-rolly, like, I love you so much, your movie was so great, you were so great in this, I cried so many times watching it, that kind of stuff. You know, it's sort of to be expected. I'm not going to hold that too much against them. But yeah, there's a bit of that in here. I noted here Ariana Grande cries a lot. I feel like we got that from the Wicked press tour as well, but I think she says she cried 5 times watching J. Kelly. I'm like, I don't know, how do you watch movies if, like, the movie J. Kelly made you sob 5 different times? Like, how do you get through, like, an actually really sad, impactful movie? But, you know, it's sweet. I will say also, and there might be some, like, armchair psychology in this video where I'm, like, analyzing conversational habits or whatever, but there was one point in this, I can't remember when exactly, where there's, like, a little bit of a lull in the conversation. There's, like, a slightly awkward moment, and she just goes, like, oh my god, I'm crying. Like, just kind of completely out of nowhere. And I was wondering, like, does she use crying just to, like, as a conversational tool? Just, like, get out of a slightly awkward moment in a conversation? I don't know. I thought that was kind of interesting. They referenced the Hercules soundtrack as a Hercules lover. I appreciate that that banging soundtrack getting some love here. That is, like, the best Disney soundtrack, so I'm glad they have taste in that respect. There was an interesting talk about Jeff Goldblum and Dustin Hoffman's acting methods. I think that's worth listening to if you're into acting, and how they either, like, get into character or how they seamlessly transition into a scene. There was something about Goldblum, like, going to a different place beforehand, and Hoffman, he, like, stays in character right before take, so it's kind of seamless. I thought that was kind of cool. Those insights I find interesting. We'll talk about it. There's some insights where I'm like, you're just sort of talking about how, like, interesting but humble you are right now. Like, I don't really care about this. Like, I think some of the stuff they're talking about is actually some of the ways that they get these performances out of, these actors get these performances out of themselves. I think that's quite cool. I did think, to be fair, because I was a big fan of Wicked and Ariana Grande's performance, and I did think it was interesting to hear her talk about her preparation for acting again, because she's so good in Wicked, and I'm not, like, that familiar with Ariana Grande and her work. I think she was on, like, a Nickelodeon show at some point or something, but you kind of forget that she was, you know, a singer, not an actress. And you can lump those together as, like, performance. Oh, she's a performer, of course she's good in Wicked. But the fact that, yeah, like, she didn't really do much acting and she had to prepare to go back to that, I thought that was kind of cool to think about. I hadn't really thought about that too much. I also thought, in regards to J. Kelly, the fact that Puppy was in the script. If you've seen J. Kelly, Adam Sandler's character, he's the agent or manager of J. Kelly. He constantly refers to him as Puppy, which I thought was, like, low-key a little bit annoying. And I did think it was, like, a Sandler-ish addition. Apparently that was in the script. I thought that was an interesting insight. Also, just a moment that I thought was... I've just written here, does he know? You know, the Riddler meme. But he references that, like, Glinda and the Tin Man should get married. And or something like that. They should, like, get together after the end of Wicked. And, of course, there's the whole thing about Ariana Grande and Ethan Slater, I think, the guy who plays the Tin Man. And, you know, messy drama and some such. And I was just wondering, like, does he So, I doubt he knows. And if he did, he probably wouldn't, say that. But I thought that was just like an interesting moment. And finally, they talk a bit about Ben Stiller, and because apparently she's in the new Fockers movie, Focker in Law. And I'm a big Ben Stiller fan, so to see him get his flowers, that was cool. They talk about going to like Ben Stiller's birthday party in New York, and I was like, damn, that must be nice. That was a little bit of like celebrity moments. Like, wait, are you going to famous actor director's Ben Stiller's birthday party in New York? Me too. I'll see you there. Like, I was like, okay, good for you guys, I guess. Maybe I'm just jealous. I don't know. But overall, Sandler and Grande, I thought they were a pretty fun pairing. Nothing mind blowing. I'm not like as much of a mega fan of both of them as a lot of people are. Pretty fun overall, I'd say. Then we move on to one of the most interesting ones, in my opinion, the Sean Penn, Julia Roberts sit-down interview, Actors on Actors. Because, as we'll talk about, there is an artificial, like, actory bullshit to a lot of these conversations. A lot of the, not just the, like, self-importance, but the, like, promo. I know the whole thing is like basically promo for these movies, and I'm sure someone says beforehand, okay, you're gonna have like a nice conversation, you're gonna like smoothly integrate how much you love their performance and their movie and all this kind of stuff. There's an artificialness to it, and I kind of enjoyed that Sean Penn immediately like calls that out. He has like almost disdain for it throughout. There was one part, what did he calls it, something like a social experiment where people compliment each other for money or something like that. And like at the end as well, he notes the artificialness of it. I will say it's almost to the point of like, okay, well, you're doing like a promo. Like, I kind of respect Julia Roberts for reining it in and like having some professionalism. But it was a little bit refreshing to see him talking about how like there's cameras here, this isn't real, like, wanting to have a real conversation, seeming annoyed when it's driven more towards like a, show where we're promoting our movies kind of conversation. I don't know. I thought that was an interesting perspective compared to these others. In terms of things that were actually said in it, I thought it was cool to get a bit of an insight into Paul Thomas Anderson's sets. Sean Penn, he describes it as like no frills type of deal where there aren't like big trailers and you get your own coffee kind of thing. I thought that was kind of cool to learn about, one of my most respected modern directors. I also thought the talks about After the Hunt, that's kind of the other big thing in this interview. I thought that was quite interesting, where Julia Roberts described it, the process of making it, as like a playground of thought, I think is the phrase she uses, where her and, the cast and the crew, they talked a lot about, After the Hunt, if you haven't seen it, it's this like Me Too type story where someone accuses someone and it's unclear, did he do it, did he not do it? And it is like a very, touchy subject. You would be kind of, I at least would be nervous to tackle this kind of thing. And I think it's the idea, the way she talks about it, that the only way to have any kind of nuanced, interesting, insightful conversation about it is to be open, is to, tackle it instead of just like avoiding it because it might be, touchy ground. I thought that was cool. And I didn't think that movie was amazing, but I did think that was one of the interesting and kind of respectable parts of it, that it actually goes for this. It actually engages with this topic, which is difficult to do. Yeah, and also Sean Penn. I mean, I thought it was interesting, Sean Penn talking about After the Hunt, because I don't know a lot about Sean Penn's personal life and whatnot, but I'm pretty sure he has had some kind of allegations thrown his way. Not like, I don't think like sexual harassment or whatever, but like domestic abuse allegations in some form or another, which I think he's denied, and I think were disproven or discredited or something. I don't know. I don't want to speak too directly on it because I don't know too much about it. But I did think it was interesting to have him be the one who talks about this movie, about like allegations and this kind of stuff. And he did say he thought it was, like an interesting film and the conversations that it would start. And he also mentioned something about like being ashamed. Like it's good to bring back being ashamed. And he sort of vaguely referenced Trump. And I don't know, I kind of like that he engaged with it a little bit. I will say Julia Roberts, considering she was in the movie, she did kind of engage in the like PR, let's not get too deep into the weeds of this, which I can kind of understand, but I like that Sean Penn, I don't really know anything about Sean Penn, but in this interview, he won me over a little bit, where the way he engaged with it a bit and was a bit real with it. So yeah, that was one of the more interesting watches. If for nothing else, just the Sean Penn hates like the artifice of actors on actors aspect of it. So kind of worth checking out, I'd say. Then we have the Jonathan Bailey, David Corenswet conversation. First of all, my first note just says very handsome and charming. feel like that should be acknowledged. Two extremely charismatic, handsome men. What's his name? David Corenswet. He's almost like I don't want to say like a comfort character because he's a real human being, but I guess because he was so good in Superman, he just seems like a lovely guy. I don't know. He seems like a cool guy. Although there was controversy in this Actors on Actors, which we'll talk about. Actually, yeah. Okay, let's talk about that first. This was sort of the big moment that was talked about from this whole series. Is they're talking about doing a mid-air levitating kiss because, you know, David Corenswet is Superman and Jonathan Bailey is Fiyero and Wicked. And David Corenswet says, every man out there would think there's no way you can look masculine and powerful and in control when you're being levitated by a woman. And later on goes on to say, you somehow maintained your masculinity. And at some point also says, it's a lot easier when you get to carry the girl. And now this, I don't think this sparked outrage, but it sparked also, I mean, it sparked just conversation. I think, for me at least, I thought it was interesting because it's just an awkward moment. Because you can tell he has good intentions when he's saying it. I think what he's trying to communicate, like from what I know about David Corenswet and from the rest of the conversation they have, he's trying to talk about like healthy masculinity, I guess, like the fact that you can be carried by a woman, you know, Jonathan Bailey does in Wicked, and still, you know, be a man, and there's nothing not manly about that. But the way he said it makes it sound like, you know, being carried by a woman inherently would be so embarrassing and so unmanly. And the fact that you, specifically Jonathan Bailey, still looked and felt masculine, you know, that's impressive. Like, it's a credit to you that you were able to do that. And I don't think that's how he meant it, but I can see like how that's kind of what it sounds like a little bit. And it's just a little bit awkward because Jonathan Bailey seems like sort of excited to talk about doing like a midair kiss. Isn't that funny that we both did that? And then it goes into this like slightly odd like masculinity line, like a tiny bit Joe Rogan-y coded. Not really what he says, but just like in the fact that it turns to masculinity immediately. And it was just a little bit awkward. And Bailey, he sort of takes it back a bit and like, I don't know, he talks about how it was an honor to, you know, be carried by and work with Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande and all that. But yeah, just an awkward moment. I think he meant it, David Corenswet, he meant it with all positive masculinity intentions. He comes across to me as a very, like, positive masculinity type of guy. But yeah, an awkward moment for sure. Just kind of interesting, I guess. They do, on that note though, they do talk about, like, male romance and the reservedness and how, I don't know, you shouldn't be reserved when you're in like a nice romance or something. There's something about like at the end, Superman chuckles when he's with Lois and it's sort of like a moment of vulnerability and showing like your, I don't know, softer side or something like that. Again, from the rest of the conversation, I feel like you can glean that David Corenswet did not mean the levitating thing in any bad way. But yeah, besides that, they're both total theater nerds, which is, you know, kind of charming to see. I'm not a big theater nerd myself, so I didn't get a ton out of that exact conversation. We'll talk about that also with Cynthia Erivo and Hugh Jackman. But they have like a charming dynamic here. I thought it was interesting. David Corenswet talked about tension and not friction when working with James Gunn, where like, you know, there's that video of them talking about his motivations, this kind of stuff, and how it's good to like have a back and forth and to try to, you know, get to the heart of what it is without actually, you know, having it be unproductive, just like fighting, like tension, not friction, I think is the phrase they use. I thought that was an interesting insight. Also, yeah, like the collaborative process of film, they talk about giving respect to John Chu and James Gunn for like having very specific visions for the films while also, you know, allowing others to contribute and collaborate and add their own thing to it, which, you know, is kind of basically what filmmaking is, having like specific visions while also it becomes more than you, like, you know, everyone's adding their own piece to it. I thought that was cool. And honestly, just again, something I like about these is, as someone who's interested in like the filmmaking process, the little behind the scenes nuggets you get, like that wheel scene in Wicked apparently took like 8 days to film, and John Chu was like having a baby on one of the days, and so he was gone. I just think it's interesting to hear about this stuff. David Corenswet in some part of this interview says like, if you've been on a film set even for one day, you see how many like moving pieces there are, and that gives you an appreciation for like how hard it is to do something like Wicked with all these musical numbers and all this crazy choreography and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, someone who's been on a film set, you know, for a little more than one day, but like basically one day in relative terms, I appreciate that a lot, because when when you are in a film set, you're like, holy shit, this is like insanely complicated, and like so much shit is going into this, so much planning and so much time and all this kind of stuff. So I thought that was interesting. And the last thing I want to say, just a note here, not really about the conversation, but just in general, I don't know if I'm alone in thinking this. Jonathan Bailey looks absolutely nothing like his characters in movies. I don't know if this is just me, but the Jonathan Bailey in this interview looks genuinely nothing like the character he plays in Jurassic World or Fiyero in Wicked. Yeah, tell me I'm wrong. Put those three faces like side by side and tell me they do not look like different people. Just something, I don't know, just a thought I had, I guess I'd put out there. Next up, we have Dwayne Johnson and Brendan Fraser doing one of these, which is, a fun pairing. They work together in one of the mummy movies, I guess, Scorpion King something. Yeah, I thought they had a pretty charming dynamic. I think Dwayne Johnson is definitely, as he, often is, in like extreme PR mode. Like not extreme PR, like, there's something bad happening, but just like, I don't know, Dwayne Johnson, I like Dwayne Johnson. We joke about him on the podcast, the Poorly Planned podcast. He's one of our, the podcast goats. Like, I like him, but I do get the feeling of just, I don't really buy he just feels like a PR machine at this point. I feel like I don't buy what he's saying as much. And maybe he's being totally genuine, because he comes across, quite sweet and wholesome. He thanks Brendan Fraser in this for giving him his start in film or whatnot. And, it is very sweet, but I guess from the stories you hear about his, he's late on set and all this kind of stuff, and the Black Adam thing, and, some stuff that's slightly tainted his image. Not like he's done anything terrible, but like, just maybe he's not like the coolest, nicest guy that he seems to be. I don't know. There's just something that I struggle with believing Dwayne Johnson, I guess. But he does come across well here. And that's the thing, when he's across from Brendan Fraser, who I feel like I do believe like the genuineness of him. And I don't know, again, maybe this is just like because I know more about them. But like Brendan Fraser, I don't know a ton about his career, but his career went like down. He talks in this about doing, some very low budget film somewhere out in the woods or something. Like his career was, I don't want to say over, but like he wasn't, he had a big career at a certain point, and then his career went down, and then he came back recently. But like I feel like he knows what it's like to basically have the career be over, like to be on the low end of that. And I feel like that gives you this like humbling experience. I'm not saying he wasn't humble before, but like some of these actors, like, I don't know. I'm not saying Ariana Grande has never struggled with anything, of course, but I feel like she doesn't know what it's like to be like, you've had it all and then it's all gone, and now you're like a kind of a normal person again. You're not really a celebrity anymore. You're not like a big famous actor who's doing Oscar stuff or whatever, or Grammy stuff in her case or whatever. But like Brendan Fraser knows that, and I feel like that's like a very human experience. He feels more like a real human being, I guess, in comparison to Dwayne Johnson, to me at least. But they have a nice conversation, and to be fair, I think it is cool. Even Dwayne Johnson as well. These two guys who have done, who do not have like perfect careers where it's like, and then it all escalates to this point, who've done some bad movies, some schlock movies, who've had, career downs and had to come back from that. And it is kind of cool to see them in this spot. I will say that. Yeah, they talk a bit about holding back and not revealing pain and like loneliness and connection and stuff. That was quite interesting. They talk about how Brendan felt after winning an Oscar and how he's still hungry and how he's still like pushing himself. I thought that was cool. There's some interesting makeup talk because, The Whale and Dwayne Johnson did makeup for Smashing Machine. Also, apparently Dwayne is working with Darren Aronofsky on a movie called Break Up, something like that. I guess he's going for this I'm a serious actor now thing. He's doing another movie with Benny Safdie, I'm pretty sure. There was talks of him doing something with Scorsese. I'm not crazy, right? That was a thing at some point. But yeah, he's going for it, I suppose. This is about like the realness and the possible fakeness of Dwayne. I feel bad saying this because this could very well have been like a very genuine, nice, wholesome moment for Dwayne Johnson. But they talk about being applauded, I believe, at the Venice Film Festival. And this hadn't really clicked for me before, but I remember we talked about this on the podcast. When The Smashing Machine premiered and it got a big standing ovation, there's a video of Dwayne Johnson, crying because he's like, damn, I'm a real actor now. I did it, all this, whatever. And again, it could be a real moment, and I hope it is, and that's like really sweet and everything. But there's part of me that's like, did someone say like, man, it'd be like a really great headline if it's like Dwayne Johnson, real actor now, cried so hard at the premiere because everyone loved him because he's doing real acting, and isn't that crazy? And then they bring up that Brendan Fraser had this, like, I'm pretty sure literal exact moment, like, in the exact same place. Like, even the camera angle that's filming them, they put them side by side. And part of me for a second was like, wait a minute, did Dwayne see that, like, everyone loved it when Brendan Fraser, cried when getting a standing ovation for The Whale, which I believe that was genuine. And did someone say, like, it'd be great if you did that thing also where, like, you did a real good performance and now you're crying because everyone loved it so much. It's just a theory. Like, I would love to think it's real, it comes from a real place. Because, again, maybe I go too far in the other direction where I assume all actors are these, like, robotic, PR freaks. And, like, I'm sure they have real emotions and moments. So maybe it was real. But when they put it side by side, I was like, wait a minute. Did they just see that Brendan Fraser did this and it got, like, big buzz and he won an Oscar and everything? And, like, everyone loved it and it was so wholesome and then they're going to do it as well? I don't know. Putting it out there, but I don't know. I'm not saying anything definitive. Maybe it was real. I hope it was. Moving on, we have Gwyneth Paltrow and Jacob Elordi. Jacob Elordi there for Frankenstein, Gwyneth Paltrow for Marty Supreme. This one was, it was skippable, I think, if you're watching these. It's not like obvious, but it's a little obvious they aren't good friends. Like, some of these you can tell that they're friends, they know each other, and this one felt a little more, just an actor talking to another actor. But it has some interesting moments, I suppose. I thought it was interesting, Jacob Elordi, the way he talks about his upcoming projects. He does not sound super confident. Like, Euphoria Season 3, he says, there's a chance that whatever we did on... Okay, I don't have the exact quote written down here. But he says something like, I'm not sure what I've done is good, basically. Like, it's such a short, truncated experience, but it's cool. And he says something else about Wuthering Heights where he's like, yeah, I think it's cool, but, I guess we'll see. I guess I enjoyed that honesty of, like... But the way he talked about Euphoria made me think a little bit like, it's such a truncated experience. What does that mean? Like, they rushed it out, they filmed it in such a short time. Was there something with that? Is it going to feel a little rushed? I don't know. But he didn't sound like, oh, we shot it and it was, like, a great script that I read and it went really well. Like, he said it like, yeah, well, it sounds like they did something interesting or weird, which I guess wouldn't be so strange for Euphoria. And then he's like, I don't know if it was the right move but we'll see. I don't know if that's exactly what he's saying, but just the way he said it, I thought that was interesting. They talk a little bit about how good movies have been coming out this year, and they mention, like, I think Paltrow says the word hyper-commercialization, and they talk about, like, basically the state of the film industry, which I thought was cool to see people in the film industry talking about, like, it's a lot of schlock, it's a lot of remakes and blockbusters and whatever, and they talk about how when that happens, like, artists can come to the forefront, push through it all, and I thought that was kind of cool to hear, people in the industry talk about. And I guess their journeys were sort of interesting, that after their first role or their first couple roles, then they had a period where they didn't get a lot of work, and they thought, like, maybe this isn't for me. Because now, you see Gwyneth Paltrow, Jacob Elordi, you think, like, yeah, they're the big stars, like, they have no problems getting work. But I guess if you look back on, like, it can seem like a little bump in their career. But if you're there for, I don't know how long, like a year, 2 years, some years, not really getting work, after, like, doing a role, a bigger role, yeah, it's got to be a little bit demoralizing. So I think that's an interesting perspective to hear about. And yeah, they talk a little bit and they acknowledge this. Elordi says, they do this in a lot of these. Elordi mentions it's kind of like dicky acting, actor talk. And they mention that, like, you leave LA and New York and it's not the end of the world. There's other stuff out there. But there is still, as there are with a bunch of these, there is still, like, some of this being an actor. It's like, I'm so lucky to be an actor, but it's also such hard work. But I'm still a normal person, but it's also such a privileged position. But also it's really hard. Like, I don't know, sometimes the way actors talk, it is hard not to roll your eyes at, which I guess is why they all acknowledge, like, I know this is, like, the actor thing, but at the same time, it might also be maybe because I don't love Gwyneth Paltrow that much. Like, I just think, I don't love her vibe, and the whole company she has, I don't know a ton about it, but I don't, like, massively respect what she does with that. And just to hear her sort of talk in this, like, pretentious actory way, yeah, it's a little bit eye-rolly, I guess. But overall, fine conversation, one of the more skippable ones, I would say. Speaking of eye-rolling actory conversations, and I feel bad about this, about, like, the possibly mean things I'm going to say here, but we go to Hugh Jackman and Cynthia Erivo. This was a rough one for me, and maybe Maybe it's because of the circumstances in which I was listening to this, which we'll talk about. But yeah, I mean, first of all, it wasn't set up, for me to love it or anything, because I don't really care that much about musical theater, and I haven't seen Song Blue. So, immediately there's parts of the conversation that I'm not going to be super into. But I like Hugh Jackman a lot, and I like Cynthia Erivo, I think. And seeing Hugh Jackman, talk about Oklahoma, I love Oklahoma, that was cool. He tells a funny story about Mark Platt, like almost winning an award twice, like La La Land Moonlight situation. I thought that was kind of funny. That's worth listening to. Also, just on Hugh Jackman, before I get into the whole thing, he's definitely coming back as Wolverine. 100%, I'm going to call it now, because she asked him about Wolverine and would he come back, and he talks about how, Logan was a great chapter close, but it was great to come back and do a different thing, and he absolutely does not give a definitive no in terms of coming back. I'll put it like that. He says something about yeah, I don't know, the character, the journey, the whatever. He gives some vague answer, and I'm like, oh, you're definitely coming back. Or at the very least, he's leaving the door open for the possibility. But it sounded like, yeah, we'll see Wolverine in one of these Avengers movies, I'd imagine. But yeah, just the Cynthia Erivo especially. I don't know. I don't want to be armchair psychologist or whatever, where it's from watching this one interview you did, I can tell everything about you. I didn't find her super likable in this. To me, she had a little bit of the vibe of someone who needs a lot of stuff brought to her on set, and a lot of, I don't know. Again, I think the way that they talk about the acting process and the musical theater process and what it means, there was something, I don't want to say dystopian about it, but there's a bit where they talk about I don't know, being part of something bigger and all this kind of stuff. And I was biking in the rain when I was listening to this. I was riding my bike up a hill in the rain, and I was just listening to these millionaire actors. And Cynthia Erivo, she's dressed in this dress with these jewels and everything, and she's talking about all these awards she's won, but how she doesn't, she thanks other people when she wins awards. Which is great, by the way. Obviously, that's great. And, especially she talks about lifting up the queer community and this kind of stuff. That's all great. But then she lists awards that she's won. She's and when I won this award, and I thanked this person, and I won this award, and I thanked this person. She basically goes through her achievements to say and when I won that, I didn't take it all in. I gave, the credit to someone else. And Hugh Jackman's wow, you're so humble, or there's such humility. And and I'm not even humility, there's such power in that. And I was just man, I don't know, it felt sort of BoJack Horseman-esque almost. I know there's no way to bring up how you give credit to other people when you win awards, which you might very well do totally, genuinely, without it sounding kind of dickish and without referencing all the awards that you've won in a way that sounds like you're kind of trying to brag about it without bragging about it. But there was a slightly I too am extraordinarily humble vibe to it. And I don't know, yeah, there was just something about the self-importance and the not only is what we do important, but also the humility of us, you know what I mean? Again, kind of the Dwayne thing, could be totally real. I'm sure she is lovely, and I'm sure she doesn't give credit to people just for the sake of it. I'm sure she actually wants to. But man, just when I was biking up that hill in the rain, listening to this, I was just shut up, bro. What? Why am I listening to this? Listening to these millionaires talk about how great and how give backing they are and how important what they do is, kind of thing. So again, maybe I was a little biased given my circumstances. I'm sure they're lovely. I'm sure Cynthia Erivo's lovely. I'm sure she does care about the things that she talks about. But yeah, not a great moment there for me. Next up, speaking of, I don't really know what this is speaking of, but we have Ethan Hawke and Sydney Sweeney did one of these. Yeah, well, yeah, a little bit of controversy here since it's Sydney Sweeney. First of all, Ethan Hawke, I just think it's funny that he's very much like Jesse, his character from before Sunrise and Sunset and Midnight, where he's a great conversationalist. He clearly loves to talk. He's a great storyteller. Little bit of a yapper, maybe. I could see maybe if you paired him up with someone who also likes to talk a lot, they could trample each other a little bit, because he sure does like to talk, but he's very good at it. He's a very good speaker. And I think, his ideas are very interesting, and he has these philosophical takes and these stories. He tells a good story about Paul Newman, I think, taking stuff he liked from his characters and seeing stuff in himself and his characters they didn't like and trying to leave that behind. I thought that was an interesting take. And Sydney Sweeney, I guess, you can't really talk about Sydney Sweeney without talking about the recent controversies and whatnot. I think she comes across better in this than she has in other interviews. Like, I've seen, just little clips of some of the interviews she did, especially around the jeans thing, where I'm like, yeah, this does not come across very well. She comes across better in this, but she still comes across like a little bit, I don't want to say stupid, because that's like a mean way of describing someone, but I can't tell if it's like something she's kind of putting on, maybe, like as part of a persona, or to maybe appeal to a certain demographic that she might be appealing to. I don't know, but she doesn't come across, especially when you're sitting across from Ethan Hawke, who's sort of this great storyteller, and he's in and out of quotes and literary references and all this kind of stuff. And then also, I mean, he like smoothly integrates the, promo aspect of it. He tells his whole story about he saw Christy with his daughter and how it was this experience and that experience. And she just goes like, so I loved you in Blue Moon. You were like so good in it. Like, I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. You know, the thing where like you can't actually think of like a specific thing to say to like compliment someone, so you just hammer home the compliment, just like, it was good, it was great, it was amazing, without really going more in depth. And to be fair to her, she does say something, a little more specific about like the amount of lines he had to learn or something like that, the amount of dialogue it is or something. But it just, even at the end, she says something like, I'll never forget this. And it just, I don't know, it just comes across as like, of course you're going to forget. Like, it's almost so over the top that it's like, it almost seems sarcastic in a way. Again, I'm analyzing, little moments. It's just how these people, actors and whatnot, talk, I guess. But I wasn't convinced of her being like a super genuine, amazingly intelligent person from this, I suppose. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. Just about the jeans thing. Like, I think the whole controversy at the start, I didn't really think much of it. It felt sort of like another culture war sort of bullshit thing. Where like, yeah, the ad was like kind of weird. I don't know. I don't know if it was like promoting the specific like Nazi agenda that some people were saying. And to me, it felt a little bit like it was meant to be like, some people get mad about it, and then people go like, look, the left are crying over Sydney Sweeney being attractive, and then just stirring the pot and all the useless bullshit that just divides people more. But the thing that I actually didn't like was the interview she did afterwards, where she didn't deny it or whatever, where she was asked about it and she went like, if I want to talk about it, I'll talk about it. Which to me just came across like some PR person had said to her like, hey, this jeans thing is like really good for our brand. People are talking about us. Don't really go either way on it. Just kind of like let the controversy simmer. Which I just think, even if she's not, I don't think she's like, I don't think she goes home and like is a Nazi or something secretly behind the scenes, but to kind of engage in it, like to not say, obviously I'm not a Nazi, obviously it was not meant to be that. Even if you're not, like to engage with it and sort of play with it for, I assume, the controversy of it all and the name value or whatever. I thought that was shitty. Like, I thought that was a bad move. And again, also like the running theory in that ad, she just comes across as like maybe not that smart, or not the ad, the interview, maybe not that smart. Like, I don't know. That's also a possibility. But anyway, that's my analysis of Sydney Sweeney, I suppose. But yeah, in terms of this, also I'll be honest, I don't think she's a great actress. Like, there's a part in this interview where Ethan Hawke says like, the worst thing you can see is like someone acting, or like, what is it? Like, when you see someone acting, it sucks. Basically, like when you can tell someone's acting. And I just thought it was like ironic, because that's how I feel about a lot of Sydney Sweeney performances. I haven't seen, some of the peak ones. I know she's in Re something, and apparently she's very good in that. But some of the performances I've seen her in, I'm like, no, I can tell you are acting, and it's not very good. So I just thought it was kind of funny that Ethan Hawke said that to her. Also, I think it's funny that this video has interestingly low views compared to the other ones. You'd think the Sydney Sweeney controversy and name value would bump this one up, but no, it's actually one of the lower viewed ones. I just think that's kind of interesting. But yeah, I'm interested in seeing Blue Moon as well, more after hearing this, because they talk about how it's like a real-time movie and it's one setting kind of thing, and it sounds cool. I'm into it. Next up, we have the Skarsgard interview, which was by far my favorite of the whole bunch. Really great stuff here. It's Alexander Skarsgard and his father, Stellen Skarsgard, there for sentimental value and Pillon. Just a super charming and really insightful conversation. This was so much more interesting than all the actory, self-congratulatory bullshit. Not only because they're very charming and funny together, and they're also, I think, like Swedish. The Swedishness helps, as I don't know, in the Scandinavian tradition, there's less of that like bullshit, whatever, talking for the sake of it, and there's a bit more of that dry humor and everything. And they're family, so they obviously are very closely connected. But it was just such a charming, interesting conversation. They talk about how Alexander Skarsgård like wanted a normal life before he got into acting, because like all of his family were artists and these like kind of eccentric people, and he wanted to just have a normal life. And sort of how he got into it, and there's like a Navy SEAL story in there about how he joined like the Swedish military, and how he's a little bit of a nepo baby because he got some connections with an agent or something, but also like he did auditions and lived in LA for 6 years or something like that, and like just a very interesting journey, the story of Alexander Skarsgård. And then Stellan Skarsgård has tons of other interesting stuff to talk about, with like how as you get older, he's been offered a lot of roles of like characters with dementia and Alzheimer's, and he doesn't really want to play that. And I can't remember the exact quote, but he said something about when you get older, you're offered to play an age instead of like a character. I thought that was like really, really poignant. And he talks about how he had a stroke, and I read something about this, but I totally forgot about it. Apparently he like gets lines fed to him now through like an earpiece or something, because he had a stroke and he struggles to memorize lines or something. I thought that was, I know the way they talked about that was really interesting. Just like a very compelling conversation. And again, like very funny as well. They have like a bunch of little bits. Stellan tells a story about like, Stellen, as if I know him, but like he tells a story about getting out of the army or something, where he pretended to like do a lot of drugs, and he's like, I was smoking some hashish, but it wasn't that bad. And that was just like a very funny moment as well. Yeah, just like a great conversation. They talk about Lars von Trier and his process, and how he was too much of a control freak in his first films, and then he like let go more, and like his style is a bit more playful and loose, and he's not that worried about like continuity and stuff. He kind of follows the energy or something. I thought that was really interesting. Fantastic conversation, really like genuinely well worth watching, even if you're not really into movies or acting or whatever. Like I sent this to my dad because I was like, it's just like a cool video. I think it's fun. So yeah, I would definitely recommend checking out the Skarsgård conversation. Next up we have Michael B. Jordan and Plemons. Why am I blanking on his first name? I've just written Plemons here. Yeah, Plemons from Bugonia and other great things. Great actor. Don't know why I'm completely... Jesse Plemons, Jesus Christ. It's like, why did I just write Plemons here? This one was kind of interesting. It was a little bit awkward, I'm not gonna lie. It feels a little bit like when you meet someone who you haven't seen since high school, and like you're like, yeah, what's up, man? And you're sort of like trying to get back into the groove of it. It was kind of funny. And I think Jesse Plemons might be like a little bit of an awkward guy, not in a bad way, but I guess there's a reason he, plays slightly strange characters. He might be like a little bit awkward, but he's still very charming. I did think it was funny. Michael B. Jordan at one point in this calls him like references that he plays a lot of weirdos, but like tries to do it in a nice way. He says that he's like, you play like a lot of these, like complicated characters. I just thought that was funny. Yeah, there wasn't as much like insight in this, really. There were some interesting things. I haven't seen Friday Night Lights, so I didn't really get much out of the like reunion aspect of it all. I did think it was funny when Jesse Plemons tells Michael B. Jordan he watched Sinners on a plane, and Michael B. Jordan's like, okay, because like Sinners was sort of the cinematic event of the year. It was like, and there was all the stuff about the film and the IMAX. Now you have to see it on the biggest screen possible. And then Jesse Plemons catches like, yeah, I watched it on a plane, and I thought he was gonna say like, and then I watched it in IMAX, and it was it changed my life. But no, he just watched it on a plane. I thought that was kind of funny. Yeah, in terms of insight, I thought some of the process behind Bugonia was really interesting. He talks about Yorgos Lanthimos having this like coming from this avant-garde Greek theater background, and so he like plays games with the actors to get them into the world of the film. And he also, this I thought was really interesting, the score, he gave the composer 5 words about the film, like I can't remember the words, but it was like alien, bald, basement, something like that. And didn't let him like on set, didn't let him read the script. And then he composed the music, and then they listened to the music before they started filming or something like that. So it was like I don't know, a strange process that I kind of fuck with the artsiness of that. I thought that was kind of cool. But yeah, they also talk about playing different characters, like playing different characters in the same film, which Jesse Plemons did on Kinds of Kindness, and Michael B. Jordan did in Sinners, of course. That was sort of an interesting conversation. Something about like Michael B. Jordan wore like 2 tight shoes as one of them, and like 2 big shoes for another one, and that helped him get into character. I thought that, that talk about, again, getting into your acting process, I think that's interesting. Yeah, I also did think it was funny that they talk about Michael B. Jordan's like twin double, like who he worked with in the scenes, who pretended to be his character. And Michael B. Jordan refers to him as the unsung hero and still just does not name him. Like, I assume he probably forgot his name. And so, yeah, it is what it is. But I thought it was funny. He's like, man, that guy, yeah, real unsung hero of the film. Just doesn't give him his name. Like, maybe sing his praises then. But, yeah, in general, there's some stuff about what Michael B. Jordan learned as an actor, directing. Michael B. Jordan says big time a lot in this, something I noted. Yeah, the last interesting thing is the name of Michael B. Jordan. I did not know this story, but apparently his dad is called Michael Jordan, so he's not named, in regard to the basketball player. But apparently that like did create, I think he calls it a healthy chip on his shoulder, where, yeah, you have the same name as like the biggest guy, and you also want to be great at something. I thought that was kind of cool. That was an insight that I did not know. Next up, we have Jeremy Allen White and Kate Hudson. This, I think, was one of my other favorite ones. This was a very charming actors on actors, which is interesting because I have not seen the Springsteen movie or Song Song Blue, but I am kind of partial to Jeremy Allen White. I really like The Bear and Carmy, and like Carmy's kind of like a literally me character for me. Like I relate a lot to Carmy, and I think he does such a great job playing him. And in his interviews, he seems like a charming guy. And Kate Hudson, I was not too familiar with. I've seen Almost Famous, but I think that's the only, and I guess, was she in Glass Onion maybe? But I wasn't that familiar with her, and she was super charming in this. Like actors are generally charming and charismatic, but again, with some of them where I'm like kind of rolling my eyes a bit, or it feels fake or kind of obnoxious, he seemed like authentically fun and exciting and, just like a cool person. And I think they had a great, I don't know if it's exactly introvert, extrovert, but they played off each other really, really well. Just a very charming listen. Yeah, there's not too much I want to say about this. Just when they talk about like getting into character or getting to portray legends or whatever it is, or like, what is it exactly here? Like, the acting process, I guess, not really getting into character, but like the whole being on set where she's like very open and crying and he feels sort of like he has his head down, this kind of stuff. This all just felt more authentic and listenable and fun to listen to than some of the other ones. Maybe it's because I'm biased towards Jeremy Allen White and I thought she was charming, but I thought this was a good one. They talk a bit about rom-coms. She asked Jeremy Allen White if he'd do a rom-com, and I thought it was cool that she talked about how like some people on a rom-com, like producers or something, I don't know, some people towards the top of it or whatever, they don't really see it as like a real movie, or they're like, yeah, we're making like a fun thing, and she really still wants to get into like a proper character and to portray, to act well and portray a real character, so it ends up being a classic, not just like some throwaway rom-com. And I thought that was kind of cool as well. So yeah, not too much to say about that one. Just a cool conversation. Then we have Oscar Isaac and Teyana Taylor. Sort of similar, not too much to say about this, except I didn't know much about Teyana Taylor before watching this. Very interesting person. At the end, I think Oscar Isaac says, like, you're the coolest person I've ever met or something. I'm like, she's pretty, again, super charismatic. But then also, like, how she went from, I guess she was a musician. She went from music to, now acting. And she's like directing, and also she talks a lot about going to like culinary school and how that's like an expression and it's cool but fun but good for your, I don't fucking know. Very interesting stuff. I just thought she was like a very compelling person, and obviously Oscar Isaac's very charismatic as well. And they seemed really genuinely into each other's movies. Again, there's a promo aspect of this, and maybe they're just like better at integrating it. But they got really into like the characters, especially. They talked a lot about the characters' motivation. She basically talks to him like he's his character for a bit of the interview. Like she asks him about his motivations and why he would do X thing, as if he's like Victor Frankenstein. And I just thought it was cool that they seemed to genuinely care about each other's films, or at least portrayed that really well. And yeah, I guess just something about the complimentary stuff here also felt more like authentic. Like when she calls him like a fucking legend and this kind of stuff. I guess because they just had a charming rapport or whatever, the way they talk to each other. But yeah, it just came across authentic, fun listen, fun watch. Then we have the penultimate one, Colin Farrell and Jesse Buckley. First of all, can I just say, in these actors on actors, can you not spoil the fucking movie you're promoting? Like, I guess some people have seen Hamnet. I have not had the chance yet, but they did this with Marty Supreme as well, and that I don't think that's come out anywhere yet. where they talk about like the final shot in Marty Supreme, and I'm like, bro, like, come on. And here they talk about like sort of what happens in Hamnet and the ending of it, and I'm like, I don't know, bro. Like, just because it's not a Marvel movie doesn't mean you shouldn't spoil it. Like, it's still, you want to experience that in real time, and I don't know, just stop doing that. Someone should say that to the actors before they start filming. But yeah, Colin Farrell and Jessie Buckley, you know, two Irish people. That was sort of fun to watch. I consider myself an honorary Irish person just because I went to college there. So, and to be clear, I went, the full time to college. I wasn't just there for one semester. So, I don't know if I can claim that, but, there's something, I have a connection to Ireland and Irish people, I guess, in this way. So that was fun to see. And they talk about how, storytelling is a big part of Irish culture. And they also, Colin Farrell says something about, when you're Irish, you don't want to be seen taking yourself too seriously. Like, oh, I'm an actor, this kind of thing. That being said, though, this does very much devolve into taking themselves too seriously. I'm not mad at it or anything. I feel like maybe this comes across a little, like, ranty and jaded on my part. But, like, I don't know, man. Just when actors get too... It's funny, because I, like, agree with a lot of this shit. Or, like, I think this is... I'm, an art... I love the arts. I believe in, like, the realness of filmmaking and art and performance and what you can get out of it and put into it. And the, it's a little bit like that Studio episode where it's like a bunch of doctors compared to a bunch of filmmakers and like how, art is important or whatever. I agree with most of the stuff, but there's just something about actors like getting really philosophical about and like complimenting and like the artifice, but there's a truth at the center of the artifice and all this kind of stuff. And it's sort of hard not to roll your eyes at. I'm sorry. Like, I kind of recognize that, again, as an arty person, I'm sure I've sounded like this when I talk about film and I talk about the true quality and the true soul that you can get out of film or whatever. But still, sometimes I am like, okay, like, come on, please. Like, yeah, there's something about artifice and the truth and art and whatnot and storytelling, but not that bad. Just, slightly eye roll inducing. But they do have some interesting stories about, acting and getting into storytelling and whatnot about, like, Jesus Christ Superstar and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. They talk about Paris, Texas for a bit. That's cool. That's a great movie. And also I thought it was cool to hear Colin Farrell talk about the Penguin and how that costume and that makeup sort of helped him get into the character in a weird way and his relationship to that character. Thought that was interesting. So yeah, pretty decent, I guess. And then the last one, and this is by far the funniest one. I'm happy this is the last one I get to talk about. Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Lawrence. What a weird fucking vibe in this one. I don't know. Obviously, I do not know these people, so I don't know if this is just how they are. Maybe they love each other, and this is just their weird dynamic that we're not in on, and this is just how they talk to each other. But holy shit, what a unpleasant combination of, like, personalities where DiCaprio in this, and I don't know if this is how he is all the time or just this interview, but he is he's almost like, he seems almost contemptuous in this interview. He seems almost like he's like angry or passive aggressive or annoyed. I wrote here slightly reptilian, like in just like his mannerisms, like a bit deadpan as well. There's sometimes where like he'll answer sort of shortly or he won't really answer at all. He'll kind of like give like a closed mouth laugh or something. And I don't know. Again, maybe that's just how he is. But there was something like weirdly, like he's not happy or like not loving this in some kind of like slightly angry way. That was the vibe, at least. Maybe he's not like that at all. That's the vibe he gave. I'm just putting that out there. And then Jennifer Lawrence is very like sort of deadpan, sarcastic, like a little bit. I don't know if millennial humor is like the correct way to describe it, but Jennifer Lawrence is sort of like humor and personality, and the way those contrast, it comes across just like a really passive aggressive thing. And again, maybe it isn't at all. Maybe they love each other and whatever. That's just how it comes across. Like it had a weird tension to it that I thought was like kind of fascinating, but also like, why? Like why? Like did something happen? Do you guys like hate each other or something? Like I don't know. I guess they don't because they're making a movie together, which we'll get to, but just had like a very weird vibe to it. And I'll be honest, it wasn't actually like that interesting or like electric of a conversation. Like you think you get these two actors, big actors, big movies, one battle after another, all this stuff, and like you get something really out of it. And like it wasn't that. I was more compelled by like the weird vibes than anything they really said. Yeah, I mean, people pointed out there's a bit where she said like something about him having a teenage daughter, or he looked great with a teenage daughter. He should why doesn't he have one in real life or something? And people have taken that as kind of a dig at, like, he's living that playboy bachelor lifestyle, and he should, like, settle down and grow up or something. I don't know if that was, like, a specific dig, maybe, but I just mean, like, the whole vibe was off, in my opinion. I guess some interesting stuff. DiCaprio talks about how Benicio del Toro improv'd a bit of the stuff in that film, or, like, came with ideas for the character. He brought something to the character in the film, and I thought that was kind of interesting. Also, how Giovanni Ribisi, apparently he's, like, big into cameras, and he helped them get some of these, like, cool cameras they film with. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, there's parts of it, I think she talks about David O. Russell, Jennifer Lawrence does, for a little bit, and without, like, calling him an asshole or anything, and she says sort of like, oh, it was good to learning experience or something, but I feel like there was an implicit he's an asshole to it. Like, she talks about how he would sort of, like, yell commands, and I don't know. Again, she sort of credits it a little bit, but I felt like there was an undertone of he's an asshole to that. Maybe that's just me. But yeah. And they're making a Scorsese movie together, which I did not know had been confirmed. I should probably be up on this stuff. Because I feel like there's been, like, 8 different fucking Scorsese movies. Like, Scorsese's doing this movie or this movie with these actors. But I guess his next thing is a DiCaprio, Jennifer Lawrence thing. Which is cool. Again, though, weird vibes. I don't know. I guess they have not started working together yet on Scorsese, but, like, even when they're talking about Scorsese and he's, like, talking about, okay, like, I don't know, some innocuous whatever, he's going to show you a bunch of movies and to learn a scene, and she's like, oh, wow. Like, I don't know. I can't point to a specific thing, and again, armchair psychology, but there was something weirdly passive-aggressive about the whole thing, which I found to be kind of interesting. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the actors on actors thing, just because, yeah, I bothered to watch all of them, so I thought I'd talk about what I thought of the pairings, what I gleaned from it, if there was anything, sort of interesting or insightful. What did you think of them if you watched them? And, yeah. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like the video, subscribe. You can check out my main channel, BHL Hudson, my podcast, The Poorly Planned Podcast, my Instagram, BHL_Hudson, and my Letterboxd, Real BHL Hudson. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.